From the far reaches of the Milky Way galaxy, it's Retro Nerd Girl with a film review for you. Today I'll be reviewing the movie I, Robot, released in 2004. Starring Will Smith, Bridget Moynahan, and Bruce Greenwood. Directed by Alex Proyas. The synopsis is, in 2035, humanoid robots have become servants of humanity. A murder occurs during the launch of a new advanced batch of robots. Detective Del Spooner is assigned to the case with the hunch that the prime suspect happens to be a robot. The story. Most people don't know that I, Robot began as a short story written by Iando Binder, going as Earl and Otto Binder. It was published in an issue of the sci-fi magazine Amazing Stories in 1939. Isaac Asimov wrote the book I, Robot, published in 1950, after reading the original short story and writing a series of 9 short stories. Originally, he wanted to call the book Mind and Iron, but the publisher overruled his wishes to use the title I, Robot to help get the book more reach because of its catchiness. All of the short stories are based on the tales told by Dr. Susan Calvin, the chief robo-psychologist at U.S. Robots and Mechanical Men Incorporated. All of the stories are about a fictional world or a possible future of interpersonal relationships between humans and positronic robots. Another anchor in the short stories are the 3 laws of robotics that Asimov clearly designed to keep automations from inadvertently hurting mankind. However, the laws lead to many dramatic situations in the book. A 0th law was added by Asimov in later sequels of the book. The laws seem to trickle into discussions about robotics in the real world as a means to realistically manage the possible actions of robots as they become more advanced and humanity depends on them more and more. Through the years, the book has been very influential in pop culture, and it was pretty much inevitable that it would be turned into a movie. The original name of the movie was Hardwired, with a screenplay written by Jeff Vintar, which was an Agatha Christie-style murder mystery. The screenplay bounced around a bit from Disney to Fox, and even given a huge budget. Alex Proyas was hired to direct it, as the studio was impressed with the public response from his previous films, The Crow and Dark City, 2 very excellent films. Once Will Smith was hired, Akiva Goldsman was signed on late in the production to co-write with Vintar to give the film a more blockbuster feel. The result is a story to be added to the collection of stories in newer publications of the book, I, Robot, using a few themes and names of characters and points from Asimov's short stories and sequels. And there is where we get into a little trouble with the story, which I'll have to expand upon when I explain my enjoyment of the film. The pacing. At an hour and 55 minutes, it's barely shy of 2 hours. It's long and it feels long. But you know something? It's never boring. The pacing has a way of keeping things moving along. About halfway through the film, things change drastically from a serious murder mystery noir to a full-blown save-the-world action movie with tons of killer robots and 1990s catchphrases. It seems a lot like 2 films in one, which is a common thread in many blockbusters, especially the ones that are 2 hours long. Now the challenge here is solving the murder of Dr. Alfred Lanning, a robotics inventor working at US Robotics. At first, it looks as if his personal NS5 robot, Sonny, committed the murder. Indeed, he did. Is he a bad robot? Well, no. It turns out that Dr. Lanning asked Sonny to kill him, and that was part of a well-laid plan to get Detective Spooner to discover a very sinister plot against mankind. Lawrence Robertson is the CEO of US Robotics and is about to launch the new batch of robots called the Nestor 5, created by Dr. Lanning. It seems like Lawrence is the most likely villain here. He's cold, he's rich, and we know very little about him other than he'll do just about anything to protect his company assets, even if it's lying or protecting or withholding information from the public. But we can't get too hung up on this character because he actually isn't the bad guy here. He's just kind of a throwaway character meant to distract Detective Spooner and the audience. To be honest, I really enjoyed that little decoy because it was kind of a tricky little surprise in the film. I knew it was him, that he was the bad guy, but I was completely wrong. The whole company is actually being run by a computer system called Vicky, short for Virtual Interactive Kinetic Intelligence, which is a positronic operating core in the entire building. Her reveal as a sinister mastermind really falls into the trope of the usual villains, where there's this intense evil artificial intelligence queen commanding all of the hive robots to do her bidding. Empathy. The hero in this film is Detective Del Spooner, assigned to investigate Dr. Lanning's murder. However, he is not your typical hero. In fact, he's mostly unlikable for the first half of the film. Even though he's cracking wise jokes everywhere, he's got a very dry humor that doesn't exactly land with all the humans that he interacts with, and sometimes even the audience. In the past, Detective Spooner was in a horrible car accident that was caused by a human drunk driver. A robot saved him, but let a child drown in the water with a lesser chance of survival. Now, this is what drives his prejudice against robots. I think it's kind of ludicrous, but for some reason he thinks that all robots cannot be trusted because they do not possess humanistic impulses. In the second half of the film, his character gets a bit more likable as he softens his hatred for robots. One of my favorite reveals of the film is when we discover that he has a robotic arm, which he got from Dr. Lanning after he lost his real arm in an accident. This is when you realize that his sour attitude is just because he's depressed and deeply resents that he is now part robot. It's very deep. I mean, much deeper than I ever thought that this character would be. And if you really watch this film, you can see that every morning he wakes from the same reoccurring nightmare. He's psychologically tortured, but he's also physically tortured because he has to rehabilitate his arm in the morning, and it's almost like a weight. It's too much for him to bear. Now, he chooses to do things manually, using old technology and wearing Converse shoes as sort of a way of holding on to his humanity and his nostalgia for being a human being. Perhaps even balancing his dependence on technology a little bit more than most people around him. And they find all of the things that he does quite archaic. As a protagonist, he may not be the most likable, but he's definitely multi-layered, and that's what I really like about him. It's something that you may catch on to right away, but when you definitely give into those multiple viewings, like I told you, you'll definitely notice how meaningful his behavior is. Now, one of his counterparts in the film is the robot psychologist Susan Calvin, who is a kind of, I would say, a sidekick for Detective Spooner, and a possible love interest who is unfortunately not very likable at first either. She starts off as a very cold and machine-like character. In many ways, she's more comfortable around the robots that she works with than actual humans. It's never really explained completely, but the film indicates in one single emotional outburst that she may have experienced some traumatic encounters with humans in the past. She prefers to be around robots because they're safe, not just physically, but even perhaps emotionally too. That is a very important factor in her characterization. In the second half of the film, her character arcs as she literally lets her hair down and becomes more open to Detective Spooner's ideas. At first, you think that they will be romantic partners, but that's kind of left up to your imagination by the end. They mostly end up being really good friends, helping each other to learn how to trust other humans. Susan is the one person that Detective Spooner really actually needs in his life to help him feel more normal. She's actually fascinated by his robotic replacements instead of being freaked out by it. Susan can actually help him deal with his situation a lot better. Now, the robot Sonny is actually the most charismatic character in the film. It's really kind of funny, but he's actually the most human-like and the most likable. His name is a reflection of Dr. Lanning's affection towards him as his son. And respectively, Sonny refers to Dr. Lanning as his father several times in the film. What I found very interesting was that the hologram of Dr. Lanning calls Detective Spooner son more than once, making Spooner and Sonny sort of spiritual brothers. Dr. Lanning intentionally created Sonny differently than the other NS5 robots. Detective Spooner notes that Dr. Lanning created Sonny to keep secrets and have dreams, which he displays in the story. Sonny has a dream of a robot uprising, and he lies about murdering the doctor in order to keep Lanning's secret. Dr. Lanning built Sonny with enhanced armor and the ability to ignore the 3 laws of robotics that pretty much control all of the robots in this film. See, the film really wants you to believe that the ability to ignore these laws is what makes Sonny think and act like a human. And that idea is completely up for debate because I don't believe that's the only thing that stands between the thoughts and actions of humans and artificial intelligence. And that is where the writing really feels incomplete for me because Sonny is a fantastic character with lots of potential to expand upon. But what they were really successful in doing with the character is showing us that the perceived wink of an eye is a symbol of trust in the context of the way Detective Spooner and Sonny use it in the film. It is also one of the ways that demonstrate that Detective Spooner eventually learns to trust Sonny, giving Detective Spooner a very strong arc for his character by the end of the film. Even eventually referring to a robot, Sonny, as his friend. The technical aspects. For 2004, the CGI was really good. I mean, it was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. And it shows. The visuals are very sleek, very futuristic. I really enjoyed the vision of this future world. It's very beautiful and very interesting. And those were the details that were really exciting. You know, the car that drives itself, the spray-on skin, things like that. I actually liked the designs of the older robots. I thought they were really quite cool. And I like the contrast between the old robots and the new robots, the NS5s. I thought that was very well done. There were visual scenes that were quite breathtaking. It was all pretty impressive, and I was incredibly impressed by how Sonny's emotions were wonderfully animated. And again, for the time period, CGI characters have improved a lot over the years, but even for that particular time period, it still works very well. I really enjoyed it. It's a pretty solid cinematic film. It's got all of the typical features of a blockbuster. And a fantastic score by Marco Beltrami. The performances were really good in this. Will Smith was really great as Del Spooner, doing his usual charismatic thing to try to make the character likable. It took some time, but eventually he does succeed by the end. He was also the film's executive producer, so he had a lot of skin in the game to really make this work. Alec Tudyk really stands out as Sonny, providing excellent motion capture and the voice for Sonny. There's even a small role for Shia LaBeouf as the neighborhood kid with the fresh mouth in this. The best part of the film. Well, the best part of the film for me was Del's reveal that he had a robotic arm. It really gave his character more depth, and it was one of those beautiful revelations, like, oh, now that makes sense. I even like the way Del finally tells his story to the audience, explaining what happened during the accident. It was a nice way of just kind of slowing things down and giving us the information to fill in the blanks. Because up until then, there were a lot of flashbacks, but no explanations. Now, the ending. The ending is filled with a lot of action, and as a lover of action movies, I can't say that I didn't like it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. The film also sets up a possible rise of the robots replicating a dream that Lanning implanted in Sonny. The robots are free now, but the question is, what are they going to do? This movie definitely leaves you with lots of unanswered questions by the end. Now, my wish list. My wish list is that I really wish there weren't so many plot holes in the film. Really, that stems from a lot of background information that goes on, and we never get to see what actually was going on behind the scenes, or backstories of characters and backstories of things that happened in the past. There's a lot of revelations which are great, but there's still a lot of questions, like why does Detective Spooner sleep with a gun under his pillow? There's not enough reason for him to want to sleep with a gun under his pillow. The camera zooms in on a picture of Susan and Dr. Lanning together. And were we to believe that they had a special relationship between each other that wasn't included in the film? It's kind of weird. Why is Lake Michigan dried out by 2035? And how did the bridge get destroyed? It's kind of a weird thing there. Why did Dr. Lanning's perfectly fine house undergo demolition only a day after his death? Why not have it sold or, refurbished or recycled? How did Susan switch Sonny's body with a blank NS5 without it being discovered by Vicky? We clearly see her implant the nanobots into his body. When did she actually get the chance to do the switch? When did that actually happen? Enjoyment. Well, the film did very well at the box office. It got mixed reviews as well. But one of the biggest gripes of the film was that the last half of the film became an action film. And there is some relevance to it in the film. And I only really came to that conclusion after seeing the film multiple times. In the case of Vicky, she's actually not intentionally evil, because she actually wants to protect humans, abiding by the 3 laws which she's actually programmed with. However, to me, the laws are indeed clever for Asimov's fictional stories. However, the film even helps to point out how they are flawed. I hate to get really nerdy here, but in actuality, when Vicky launches her takeover, she's abiding by Asimov's 0th law of robotics, which is not directly mentioned in the film. This law states that a robot may not harm humanity, or through inaction allow humanity to come to harm. And this particular law takes away the freedom from humans in general to choose their own destiny. Ideally, it's up to each individual of age to decide how safe they want to be. Artificial intelligence is here to help us make decisions, not make them for us. So to me, the rules are too intrusive on mankind. I love the conversation that this inspires, although the 3 laws are just a plot point and not the actual discussion. There's still more to discuss. The film wants us to discuss, or more or less adopt, Detective Spooner's point of view, which is that to be more human, artificial intelligence will have to abide by the 3 laws, but know when to ignore them, to do the quote-unquote right thing. And even that's up for discussion, because the right thing is often subjective and determined individually from person to person, with things like evidence as well as many intangibles like intuition, beliefs, upbringing, and moral values. They're just incredible topics to explore. And iRobot really has so much going for it, which makes for a very entertaining film. My rating is an 8.4. Well, that sums up my review. I hoped you liked it. This is Retro Nerd Girl signing off. Take care, movie lovers. I'm off to my next review.